The worn hinges of a roadside bar groaned as a small girl pushed her way inside, dragging a sliver of dying afternoon light through the haze of cigarette smoke. The chatter cut short for just a moment, long enough for every weathered, ink-covered face in the room to snap in her direction. She looked no older than 16 or 17, drowning in a battered leather jacket that had clearly been made for someone twice her size. Her sneakers were caked in dirt, her jeans ripped, and her hair pulled back in a haphazard knot. She paused in the doorway, gripping the lapels of the jacket like a shield, as the stares around her shifted from puzzlement to curiosity, and then to amusement. The laughter that started was gentle at first, the kind that bubbles up when something just doesn't fit. But it quickly swelled into something louder, a wave of hoots and jeers bouncing off the walls. The Iron Wolves, a motorcycle club that had struck fear across the county for decades, had simply never seen anyone quite like her walk in unaccompanied. A teenage girl, surrounded by hardened men who rode iron machines and lived by a code older than she'd been alive. The biggest man in the room, Tank, tilted back in his seat and let out a booming laugh. "What do we have here? A little Girl Scout who took a wrong turn?" The whole bar exploded, bottles raised, boots hammering the floorboards. Yet the girl didn't flinch. She planted her feet and breathed steadily until the noise gradually died away. And that's when they saw it. The patch stitched onto the back of her jacket. Before we go any further, if you believe in compassion, second chances, and the quiet power of courage, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner. Your support helps us carry stories that remind people there is still goodness left in this world. The patch was no ordinary thing, worn and weathered, its colors bleached by time, but the lettering remained unmistakable. Iron Wolves, founding member. The laughter dried up instantly. Men who had been doubling over in amusement a second ago now sat upright, trading bewildered looks across the room. That patch wasn't something you could pick up at a shop or earn overnight. It belonged to legends, the original founders who had built the club from nothing, long before most of these men had ever pinned on their own colors. The girl turned slowly, holding each of their gazes in turn. Her voice shook slightly, but she made no effort to hide it. "This jacket was my father's," she said quietly. "Eli Rivers." The name moved through the room like a cold draft. Eli Rivers was etched into the memory of every single man sitting there. He had been among the Iron Wolves' finest, a natural leader, a fearless rider, and someone who never walked away from what was right. He had lost his life years ago out on Route 66, pulling a family to safety from a car that was going up in flames. None of them had laid eyes on his daughter since they'd stood at his graveside. And yet, here she was, wearing his jacket and standing in his place. Her name was Mara, and she hadn't come to trade stories about the past. She was there because she needed help. Her mother's health had deteriorated, the medical bills had become impossible to manage, and no one in their town had been willing to step up. "I didn't know where else to turn," she confessed softly. "Mom always told me that Dad's brothers would never let us hit the ground." Those words landed like a hammer blow. All around her, the smirks had curdled into something closer to guilt. These men, broad, tough, and loud, had gone completely quiet, their hard expressions giving way as old memories came rushing back. Eli had been one of their own, and they had made a promise to watch over his family. But promises have a way of fading when enough years roll by, and life carries everyone along in different directions. Now his daughter was standing right in front of them, bearing both his name and his patch. Tank, the very man who had laughed the hardest, rose slowly to his feet. His voice caught when he finally spoke. "You shouldn't have had to walk in here by yourself, kid." He pulled off his cap and pressed both hands over his face. Across the room, the other bikers exchanged looks, small, deliberate nods that communicated something no one needed to say out loud. That same night, Mira rode home at the head of a roaring convoy, the Iron Wolves flanking her through the darkness, their headlights splitting the night road ahead. They didn't simply patch up her house, they rebuilt it from the ground up. By the next morning, neighbors stood on their porches in disbelief as a dozen leather-clad bikers rolled paint onto walls, hammered fences back into shape, and hauled in bags of groceries. For the first time in what felt like forever, Mara's mother laughed. But something deeper than a house had been repaired. Something within the club itself had shifted. Mara had become a quiet symbol of everything they had let slip away, and everything they had just recovered. The old sense of loyalty, buried under layers of ego and the passage of time, came surging back to life. They organized charity rides, delivering meals to families in need, raising money for veterans, and spending time with children in hospital wards. They wore their patches with renewed pride, always mindful of the reasons they had first sewn them on, and at the front of every ride was Mara, young, resolute, carrying her father's name forward on a restored version of his old motorcycle, refurbished by the very same men who had once believed they had nothing worth fighting for anymore. The sight of her gave them something they hadn't felt in years: a reason. The townspeople started calling her the Little Wolf. Months later, at the annual Iron Wolves gathering, Tank approached Mara holding something bundled in cloth. She unfolded it to find a custom-made patch. It read Legacy Rider, and beneath that, in smaller lettering, Daughter of Eli Rivers. As the room watched her carefully stitch it alongside her father's original patch, not one person managed to keep their eyes dry. She glanced up at the men around her, a quiet smile crossing her face. Dad used to say the patch doesn't give you strength. It just reminds you who you're riding for. The words hung in the still air of the hall, and in that moment, every person present understood that what bound them together wasn't leather or thread or even the name on their backs. It was love, loyalty, and a kind of bravery that doesn't need to raise its voice to make itself felt. From that day on, wherever the Iron Wolves traveled, people took notice of the young woman riding among them, the girl whose jacket told a story louder than any engine ever could. She wasn't simply carrying on her father's legacy. She was building one of her own. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every click helps us bring more stories of love, redemption, and humanity to people who need to hear them. Before you go, share your thoughts in the comments. What does loyalty mean to you? Have you ever crossed paths with someone whose quiet strength left a mark on you? And as the Iron Wolves thundered down the open road, the wind lifted the back of Mara's jacket, both patches catching the light, a living reminder that kindness, like legacy, never truly disappears.